At a lavish birthday party for my son, which I had paid for in full, I arrived late and heard through the window as his greedy wife made a toast. Thank God that worthless old man didn't come. Now we can really celebrate. The laughter of the 47 guests cut like a knife. I smiled, walked away, and made one phone call. 15 minutes later, the party was over. Before continuing, subscribe to our new channel, where we tell stories about men who take revenge on their insolent children, sons-in-law, and daughters-in-law. My name is Richard Turner. I'm 68 years old, and I've spent the last 43 years calling Phoenix, Arizona, my home. I retired from architecture 3 years ago after selling my firm for $2.3 million. Always believed that family was the foundation of everything worth building. Turns out I should have paid more attention to the cracks. My son Jason is 35 now. There was a time when he'd call me every Sunday just to talk. When he was 7, he'd wait by the window for my car, running out to show me his latest drawings. He wanted to be an architect, just like his old man. But somewhere between childhood and adulthood, something shifted. Or rather, someone shifted it. Ashley came into our lives 4 years ago at a charity gala. She was beautiful, the kind of beautiful that makes men stupid and women cautious. Jason fell hard and fast. Within 6 months, they were engaged. I tried to be happy for him. I really did. But there were small things that bothered me. The way she'd calculate the cost of everything with her eyes. How she'd steer conversations toward my retirement plans, my assets, my will. Her smiles never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. The wedding was lavish. I paid for most of it, $87,000. Ashley's family contributed exactly nothing, citing financial difficulties. Jason asked me to cover their honeymoon too. Another $12,000. I said yes because I wanted my son to be happy. Because that's what fathers do, right? The first real crack appeared about 6 months after the wedding. Jason called, asking for $150,000 to expand his marketing agency. Said it was a sure thing, a can't-miss opportunity. I looked at the business plan, if you could even call it that. The numbers didn't add up. I told him no. The phone went silent for a moment. Then I heard Ashley's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. Jason's tone changed immediately. He called me selfish. Said I was sitting on millions while he was struggling to build something. I tried to explain that I'd worked for every dollar, that he needed to do the same. He hung up on me. After that, the Sunday calls stopped. The invitations to dinner became fewer. When I did see them, Ashley's eyes would narrow whenever I spoke. Jason grew distant, echoing her opinions like a puppet. Still, I kept trying. I offered to help with smaller things, connecting Jason with potential clients, giving business advice. He'd thank me politely, but there was a coldness there that hadn't existed before. 3 years ago, despite my reservations, I gave them the house on Camelback Road, the one I'd designed myself back in the 90s, $847,000 in current market value. I had the gift deed drawn up with what my attorney called a reversionary clause, a provision that let me reclaim the property if certain conditions were violated. Daniel Coleman, my lawyer, insisted on it. Just a formality, he'd said. Protection against unforeseen circumstances. I signed it without really thinking it through. Jason and Ashley were thrilled. For about 3 weeks, things felt almost normal again. Then the requests started again. Could I help with their property taxes? Could I loan them money for renovations? Could I update my will to ensure Jason received everything immediately instead of through a trust? Each time I refused, the temperature dropped a little more. 2 weeks ago, Jason called to invite me to his birthday party. 35 was a milestone, he said. Ashley was planning something special. They wanted me there. The warmth in his voice sounded genuine, and foolish old man that I am, I let myself hope that maybe things were finally improving. I spent $23,450 on that party. The caterer alone cost $8,000. Premium open bar, live jazz band, decorations that transformed their backyard into something from a luxury magazine. Ashley sent me the vendor list, and I paid every invoice without complaint. It was my son's birthday. I wanted it to be perfect. The party was scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Saturday. I had a meeting with a former client that afternoon, a consultation about their new office building. Old habits die hard, and I'd promised to review their architect's plans. The meeting ran long, as these things do when you're dealing with structural concerns on a 15-story building. By the time I pulled up to the house on Camelback Road, it was nearly 8:30. The street was packed with cars. Through the windows, I could see the party in full swing. The jazz trio I'd hired was playing something smooth and mellow. Guests mingled with champagne glasses, the golden light from inside making everything look warm and inviting. I sat in my car for a moment, straightening my tie, checking my reflection. I'd worn my best suit. The charcoal gray one Jason had always said made me look distinguished. I walked up the curved driveway, carrying the gift I'd wrapped myself. A vintage Leica camera Jason had mentioned wanting years ago. Cost me $4,000 at an estate sale, but his face would be worth it. As I approached the front door, I heard laughter spilling from the open living room window. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, when I heard Ashley's voice rise above the music. "Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please?" The music lowered. Glass tapped against glass. "I'd like to make a toast to my wonderful husband on his 35th birthday." I smiled, deciding to wait outside for just a moment. Let her have her moment before I came in. "Jason, you've worked so hard to build your business, to create the life we have together, and we've done it despite certain obstacles." Her voice dripped with something I couldn't quite place. "So here's to us, and to this beautiful home that's finally, truly ours. And thank goodness that worthless old man didn't show up tonight. Now we can really celebrate." The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment I thought I'd misheard, but then the laughter erupted. 47 guests, I'd paid for every single one of them to be there, laughing at me, at the worthless old man. I heard Jason's voice join in. "To be fair, honey, he's probably in his workshop building another birdhouse or whatever. You know how he is, completely out of touch with the real world." More laughter. Someone shouted, "At least he has money, even if he won't share it." The crowd roared. Ashley again. "Oh, we'll get our share eventually. Just have to wait for nature to take its course. Hopefully sooner, rather than later." The laughter turned darker, more vicious. My hand was still on the doorknob. The gift box felt suddenly heavy in my other hand. $4,000 for a camera, $23,000 for a party, $847,000 for a house. Years of trying to maintain a relationship with a son who called me worthless behind my back. I stood there for exactly 30 seconds, listening to them celebrate my absence. Then I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but don't regret either. I carefully set the gift box down on the doorstep. I walked back to my car, each step measured and deliberate. My hands didn't shake as I unlocked the door. I sat in the driver's seat in complete silence, staring at that beautiful house I'd designed 27 years ago, the house where my son lived, the house where my daughter-in-law just called me worthless, the house that, according to a piece of paper in Daniel Coleman's office, still belonged to me under certain very specific conditions. I started the engine. Classical music filled the car, Beethoven's Ninth. I turned it off. I needed silence to think. The party continued inside, light and laughter spilling out into the warm Phoenix night. None of them knew I'd been there. None of them knew I'd heard everything. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Daniel Coleman's number. My attorney. My friend for the past 22 years. A man who'd drawn up a gift deed with a reversionary clause that, at the time, had seemed like unnecessary paranoia. The clock on my dashboard read 9:47 p.m. I hit dial. Daniel answered on the third ring. "Richard, everything okay? It's pretty late." "I need you to pull the gift deed on the Camelback property," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Too calm, too controlled. "The one with the reversionary clause." A pause. I heard papers shuffling. "Jason's house? Richard, what's going on?" I sat in my car, watching shadows move across the windows of the house I'd given away. "Tell me about the clause, specifically the conditions that would trigger a return of the property." More shuffling. Daniel's voice became professional, careful. "The reversionary clause stipulates that the property returns to you if the recipient, Jason, engages in behavior that demonstrates a fundamental breach of familial respect and obligation. It's deliberately broad, designed to be enforceable under Arizona property law. We included language about public humiliation, abandonment of family duties, or actions that would constitute undue harm to the grantor's dignity or well-being. Public humiliation, I repeated. Through the window I could see Ashley laughing, her head thrown back. Define that legally. In this context, it would mean behavior that demeans or degrades you in front of witnesses, particularly behavior that suggests the relationship has been fundamentally damaged by their actions, not yours. Daniel's voice sharpened. Richard, did something happen at the party? I told him. Every word, the toast, the laughter, Jason's comments about birdhouses and being out of touch, Ashley's joke about waiting for nature to take its course. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Daniel spoke again, his tone had changed completely. That's unambiguous public humiliation with 47 witnesses. The clause is enforceable. But Richard, if we do this, how fast can you move? Tonight? Richard, it's Saturday night. I'd need to contact Judge Morrison for an emergency hearing, file the paperwork, get a court order. How fast, Daniel? Another pause. I could almost hear him calculating. Judge Morrison owes me a favor from the Hendricks case. If I call in that chip, if I can reach him in the next 30 minutes, if he agrees this constitutes an emergency. Maybe 2 hours, maybe less. But are you sure? This will detonate their entire life. I watched Jason appear in the window, drink in hand, arm around Ashley's waist. They were both laughing. Activate the clause, I said. I want them out of that house tonight. This is scorched earth, Richard. There's no going back from this. I paid for the party they're using to celebrate my absence. I paid for the house they think is finally truly theirs. I paid for everything, Daniel, and they called me worthless. My voice stayed level, but something cold had settled in my chest. Scorched earth sounds about right. I hung up before he could argue further. The car felt too small suddenly. I got out, leaning against the hood, staring up at the Phoenix sky. The stars were barely visible through the light pollution, but they were there, constant, unchanging, unlike children who turn into strangers. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. Morrison agreed. Filing paperwork now. Court order within 90 minutes. You're sure? I typed back, absolutely. While I waited, I let myself remember. Not the recent years, but before. Before Ashley. Before the coldness. Jason at 7, his small hand in mine as we walked through one of my construction sites. He'd worn a tiny hard hat I'd bought him. Bright yellow, too big for his head. When I grow up, I'm going to build houses just like you, Dad. His gap-toothed smile had been so genuine, so full of pure love. Jason at 15, sullen and angry after his mother and I divorced, but even then, when he'd stayed with me on weekends, we'd found common ground. I taught him how to use my woodworking tools. He wasn't particularly good at it, but he tried. We'd spend hours in my workshop, mostly in comfortable silence, occasionally talking about school or girls, or his dreams for the future. Jason, at 22, graduating from Arizona State with a business degree. I'd been so proud. He'd hugged me after the ceremony, whispered, "Thanks for never giving up on me, Dad," in my ear. I'd helped him start his marketing agency, not with money, but with connections, advice, and actual work reviewing his business plans until they made sense. Where had that young man gone? When had he become someone who would stand in a house I'd given him and mock me to a crowd of people drinking champagne I'd purchased? I knew the answer. Ashley. But that wasn't entirely fair, was it? Jason was a grown man. He'd made his choices. He'd chosen her, yes, but he'd also chosen to let our relationship wither. He'd chosen to ask for money instead of advice. He'd chosen to stand beside her while she called me worthless. My phone rang. Daniel, it's done. Judge Morrison signed the order. Sheriff's deputies are en route to 4521 Camelback Road with a court-appointed executor. They'll arrive in approximately 25 minutes. The order requires immediate vacation of the premises within 60 minutes of notification. How did you move that fast? Morrison's daughter is an architect. She's a fan of your work. When I explained the situation, he was sympathetic. Richard, last chance. I can call this off. I looked at my watch. 10:17 p.m. Don't call it off. Understood. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this. So am I. I ended the call and made a decision. I wouldn't stay to watch. Whatever satisfaction I might get from seeing their faces when the deputies arrived wasn't worth being there. This wasn't about cruelty. It was about consequences. They'd made their bed in my house, and now they could find somewhere else to sleep in it. I started the car and drove. Not home. I couldn't face the emptiness of my own house yet. Instead, I drove to my workshop on North Scottsdale Road. It's a small commercial space I've rented for the past 15 years, filled with woodworking equipment, half-finished furniture projects, and the smell of sawdust and varnish. My sanctuary. I unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and stood in the middle of the room. A dining table I'd been building sat on the workbench, 3 legs attached, the 4th waiting. Cherry wood, hand-carved details, the kind of craftsmanship that takes time and patience. Jason had called it birdhouses to get a laugh from people drinking my champagne. I picked up the 4th leg and the wood glue. My hands were steady. I had work to do, and however long the night lasted, I'd spend it doing something useful, something real, something that mattered. At exactly 11:32 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "It's done. They're out. Deputies confirmed compliance. House is secured. Are you okay?" I set down the sandpaper I'd been using and looked at the message for a long moment. Was I okay? I'd just destroyed my son's life, or at least the comfortable version of it he'd been living. I'd evicted him from his home in the middle of his own birthday party. In a few hours, he'd know it was me. He'd call, probably. Scream. Beg. Blame. I texted back, "I'm fine. Thank you, Daniel." Another buzz. "This isn't over. They'll fight this. You know that, right?" "Let them fight. I have nothing but time." I put the phone on silent, set it face down on the workbench, and picked up the sandpaper again. The wood was rough under my fingers, but with patience and effort, it would become smooth, beautiful, worthy of the craftsmanship I'd put into it. Unlike some things, furniture could be fixed. Trust, once broken by betrayal, was harder to repair, maybe impossible. The 4th leg of the table took shape under my hands. Outside, somewhere in the Phoenix night, my son and his wife were packing their belongings under police supervision, their party guests scattered, their perfect evening shattered. I felt no joy in that image, but I felt no regret either, just a cold, clear certainty that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. The worthless old man had finally shown them exactly what he was worth, and the price they'd pay for that lesson was just beginning. I didn't learn what happened at the house until the next morning. Daniel called me while I was making coffee in my kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows that overlooked my small backyard garden. "They're out," he said without preamble. "The deputies executed the order at 10:15 last night." Jason opened the door, thinking it was a noise complaint from the neighbors. I poured my coffee, watching the dark liquid fill the cup. How did he react? Shocked, confused, then angry when the court executor explained the situation. "Your daughter-in-law, Ashley—" Daniel paused, and I heard papers rustling. She became hysterical, screamed that it was a mistake, threatened to sue everyone present. The executor read her the court order verbatim. She tried calling several attorneys, but it was Saturday night. No one answered. I added cream to my coffee, stirred slowly. And the guests? Gone within 20 minutes. The deputies gave Jason and Ashley 60 minutes to pack essentials. They used all of it. One of the officers noted that several neighbors came out to watch. Quite a scene, apparently. I'm sure it was. I took a sip. The coffee was good, a dark roast I'd picked up from a small shop downtown. Strange how normal things continued while someone's life fell apart. Did Jason try to contact me? 7 times, all declined calls. Daniel's voice softened. "Richard, he's going to keep trying. And when he does get through, it won't be pleasant. I'm counting on it." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, just thinking. The house at 4521 Camelback Road was empty now. My house. The one I'd designed in the 90s when Jason's mother and I were still married, still happy, still believed we'd grow old together in those rooms. I'd put so much of myself into that design, the vaulted ceilings to capture light, the open floor plan she'd wanted, the study where I'd spent countless evenings reviewing blueprints, while Jason did homework at the desk beside mine. I'd given it to Jason and Ashley 3 years ago, and they'd treated it like it was always theirs. No, that wasn't quite accurate. They'd treated it like I owed them more. My phone rang. Jason, I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Again. On the fifth call, I answered. Dad, what the... He caught himself, his voice strained with barely controlled rage. What happened last night? The police showed up at my birthday party and kicked everyone out. They said you're taking back the house. I set my coffee cup down carefully. That's correct? That's correct? That's all you have to say? You evicted us during my birthday party, in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how humiliating... Humiliating? I let the word hang between us. You want to talk to me about humiliation, Jason? Silence. I could almost hear him thinking, trying to figure out what I knew. I was there, I said quietly. Last night, I heard Ashley's toast, the one about how wonderful it was that the worthless old man didn't show up. I heard you laugh. I heard you tell everyone I'm out of touch with the real world, building birdhouses in my workshop. More silence. Then, Dad, that was just... We were drinking. It was a joke. A joke? My voice stayed level, controlled. Tell me, Jason, what part was funny? The part where your wife called me worthless? Or the part where she said she hoped nature would take its course sooner, rather than later, so you could get my money? She didn't mean... He was floundering now. 47 guests, Jason. I paid for every single one of them to be there. $23,450 for a party celebrating my absence. And you think that's a joke? Look, I'm sorry, okay? Ashley gets carried away sometimes, but she didn't mean it. We'll apologize. We can work this out. No, I said, we can't. You made your choice when you stood there and laughed while your wife mocked me. I'm just making mine. I hung up before he could respond. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off completely. The following days fell into a strange rhythm. I worked in my shop, attended to some consulting projects, lived my life, but I also watched. Not physically, I didn't drive by the house or stalk them, but I listened. Phoenix isn't a small town, but in certain circles, everyone knows everyone. Word travels. Through casual conversations with former colleagues, I learned that Jason and Ashley had checked into the Marriott on East Camelback. $287 a night, which would add up quickly for a couple whose marketing agency was, according to those same colleagues, struggling more than they let on. I also heard they were telling people I'd kick them out over a minor misunderstanding, making me the villain in their carefully edited version of events. I found that fascinating, the way they could twist reality to fit their narrative. It was almost impressive in its shamelessness. A mutual acquaintance, Helen Morris, who'd worked with my firm years ago, called me 3 days after the eviction. Richard, I heard about what happened with Jason and Ashley. They stopped by yesterday, and Ashley was very upset. She said you threw them out without warning over something she said at the party that you misunderstood. Is that what she said? Well, yes. She seems to think you're being unreasonable, that you might be... Helen hesitated. She mentioned that you might be experiencing some memory issues, that maybe your attorney is taking advantage. I had to admire Ashley's strategy, attack my credibility, my mental capacity, make people question whether I was competent to make decisions. It was ruthlessly efficient. Helen, let me ask you something. If someone stood in your home, a home you'd given them, and told a room full of people that you were worthless and they wished you'd die soon so they could inherit your money, how would you respond? The line went very quiet. She said that, in those exact words, while I stood outside the window, listening. Oh, Richard, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. That's not the version they're telling. I kept my voice gentle. Helen wasn't the enemy. But now you do know. I'd appreciate it if you'd keep that in mind the next time they come looking for sympathy. After I hung up, I thought about Ashley's approach. She was smart, I'd give her that. Not smart enough to avoid getting caught, but smart enough to fight back. She wasn't going to accept this quietly. She was going to wage a campaign, social, legal, whatever it took, to either get the house back or punish me for taking it. The question was, what else was she willing to do? What other schemes had she been running that I didn't know about yet? I thought about the gift deed, the reversionary clause Daniel had insisted on including. At the time, it had seemed like excessive caution. Now it had proven its worth. But Daniel was thorough. If he'd thought to protect that asset, what else might he have suspected? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Veronica Stewart, private investigator. I'd used her services once 6 years ago when a contractor I'd hired for a renovation project had claimed damages that seemed suspicious. Veronica had proven the claim was fraudulent. Within a week, I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "Richard Turner," she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "It's been a long time. Let me guess. You need someone investigated." "My son and his wife." "Family cases," she sighed. "Those are always messy. What am I looking for?" "I don't know yet. That's what I'm hiring you to find out." We met the next afternoon at a coffee shop in Tempe, far enough from my usual haunts that we wouldn't be seen together by anyone who mattered. Veronica looked exactly as I remembered, mid-40s, sharp eyes, the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. I told her the whole story, the party, the eviction, Ashley's campaign to paint me as senile. "They're living beyond their means," I said. "Jason's marketing agency isn't doing well. I know that much from talking to people in the industry. But they were spending like money wasn't a concern. I want to know where it's coming from." Veronica took notes on a small tablet. "Financial investigation. I'll need access to public records, obviously. Court filings, property records, business registrations. Anything else you can give me helps." I slid a folder across the table. Copies of the gift deed, Jason's business registration, their social media profiles. Ashley likes to post about their lifestyle. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, designer purchases. She flipped through the papers, her expression thoughtful. People who flash money on social media are either very wealthy or very desperate to appear that way. I'll have a preliminary report for you within 2 weeks. "How much do you charge?" "$200 an hour plus expenses. I'll cap it at $10,000 unless I find something that requires deeper digging." "Do it," she smiled slightly. "You're not the grieving father trying to reconnect with his son, are you?" "Not anymore." As I drove home, I felt something shift inside me. For years I'd been reactive, responding to Jason's requests, deflecting Ashley's manipulation, trying to maintain a relationship that had been dying slowly. Now I was taking control, gathering information, building a foundation for whatever came next. It felt good. Better than it should have, maybe. But I was done being the worthless old man they could use and discard. I was going to find out exactly what they'd been hiding, and then I was going to show them what happened when you underestimated someone who'd spent 4 decades designing structures meant to last. The phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Jason again. I sent it to voicemail. Whatever he wanted to say could wait. I had work to do. The next morning I woke with purpose for the first time in months, maybe years. There was clarity in knowing exactly where you stood with someone, even when, especially when, that knowledge hurt. I made breakfast, took my time with the newspaper, and at precisely 9 o'clock, I called Daniel Coleman's office. His secretary put me through immediately. "Richard, how are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I said. "I need you to do something for me. Pull all the legal documents related to Jason and Ashley. The gift deed, obviously, but also anything else. Tax records you have on file, any contracts or agreements I've signed involving them." "Looking for something specific?" "Just being thorough. If Ashley's planning to fight this in court, I want to know every legal connection between us, every potential vulnerability." "Smart," Daniel said. "I'll have my paralegal compile everything. Should have it to you by end of day tomorrow. Anything else?" I hesitated, then decided to trust my instinct. Hypothetically, if someone had taken out a loan using property they didn't own as collateral, would that be illegal? A pause. "You mean mortgage fraud?" "Yes, that's a federal offense." "Why?" "Just curious about what Ashley might try. She's desperate now. Desperate people make mistakes." "Richard, if you suspect something, we should—" "I don't suspect anything yet. I'm just thinking ahead." I thanked him and hung up before he could push further. The truth was, I didn't have concrete suspicions, just a nagging feeling that something didn't add up. Jason's agency was bleeding money. I'd confirmed that much through discreet conversations with people in the marketing world. Yet they'd been living in expensive luxury. The house I'd given them had no mortgage, so they should have had lower overhead than most couples their age. Where was the money going? Or more importantly, where was it coming from? That afternoon, I drove to my workshop and did something I rarely allowed myself to do. I went through the boxes of family photographs stored in the back room. Pictures of Jason as a baby, a toddler, a teenager, his high school graduation, his college acceptance letter, framed and signed by both of us. There was one photo in particular that stopped me. Jason at maybe 9 or 10, standing next to a birdhouse we'd built together. It was crooked, the roof slightly askew, paint dripping in places where he'd been too enthusiastic with the brush. But he was beaming, his gap-toothed grin enormous, one arm around my waist. I'd kept that birdhouse for years. It had hung in my first workshop until it finally fell apart. I remembered being so proud of him that day, so certain he'd grow up to be someone special. Maybe he still could be, if he could break free from Ashley's influence, if he could remember who he used to be before money and status became the only things that mattered. I put the photo back in the box and locked the storage room. Nostalgia was a trap. The Jason in that photo didn't exist anymore, if he ever truly had. The man who'd laughed at his wife's cruel toast was the real Jason. I needed to accept that. Over the next week, I fell into a routine of what I privately called reconnaissance. I didn't contact Jason or Ashley directly. I didn't have to. Phoenix's professional community provided everything I needed to know. Ashley had hired Glenn Parker, an aggressive property attorney with a reputation for taking cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. $250 an hour, with a $20,000 retainer. I wondered how they were paying for that. The hotel alone was running them over $2,000 a week. Add Parker's retainer, and they were hemorrhaging cash they supposedly didn't have. Interesting. I also learned through my network that Ashley had been making calls to family members, my sister in Flagstaff, Jason's mother's relatives, even some of my former business partners. The message was consistent. Richard had experienced some kind of mental break. He'd become paranoid, cruel, possibly senile. They were victims of his irrational behavior and needed support to fight back. Some people believed her. My sister called, concerned and confused. I explained the situation calmly, factually. She believed me, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. Ashley was good at sowing uncertainty. Others weren't so easily convinced. Tom Richards, my former partner, called to say Ashley had contacted him asking for a character reference for a legal filing, something about proving I was mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. I told her to go to... Tom caught himself. I told her no. What the heck is going on, Richard? I gave him the abbreviated version. Tom whistled low. That's cold. The whole birthday party thing. Very. You need anything, you call me. I mean it. I thanked him and meant it. It was good to know who your real friends were. 10 days after the eviction, Veronica Stewart called. I have your preliminary report. You're going to want to see this in person. We met at the same coffee shop in Tempe. Veronica slid a manila folder across the table. Your instincts were correct. They're hiding something. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, credit reports, property records. Talk me through it. Jason's agency is failing. You already knew that. But here's what you didn't know. They've been living off credit cards for the past 18 months. They're carrying over $90,000 in credit card debt across 7 different cards. 90,000? I stared at the numbers. It gets better. 6 months ago, Ashley took out a home equity loan on the Camelback property. $185,000. I looked up sharply. That's not possible. They didn't own the house. I gave them the gift deed, but there were restrictions. She forged the documents. Veronica tapped a page showing loan paperwork. Used a copy of the gift deed, altered it to remove the reversionary clause, and submitted it as proof of ownership. The loan company didn't do their due diligence. They saw a house worth $800,000 free and clear and approved the loan. My hands tightened on the folder. That's fraud. Federal mortgage fraud, to be specific. She could get 30 years if prosecuted. Veronica leaned back. But it explains why she panicked when you evicted them. If they lost the house, the loan would be called in immediately. She'd be exposed. I sat back, processing. Ashley hadn't just been greedy. She'd been criminal. And Jason, did he know? Or was he as clueless as he seemed about most things involving Ashley? There's more, Veronica said. I tracked where the loan money went. They paid off the credit cards, that was $70,000, bought Ashley a new Mercedes, $45,000. The rest went into their checking account and has been spent on restaurants, trips, shopping. It's all gone. All of it? Every penny. They're broke, Richard. Worse than broke. They're in debt up to their eyeballs, and now that you've taken back the house, that loan is going to default. When it does, the bank will investigate, and when they investigate, they'll find the forged documents. I closed the folder carefully. How long before that happens? The loan was supposed to be repaid through monthly payments tied to the property. Now that the property is back in your name, the bank will be notified within 30 days. After that, she shrugged, could be weeks, could be months before they investigate thoroughly, but it will happen. I sat in that coffee shop for a long time after Veronica left, staring at the folder. Ashley had committed a federal crime using property I'd given them in good faith. She'd forged legal documents, defrauded a bank, and spent the money like it would never run out. And when I'd taken back the house, I'd inadvertently set in motion the chain of events that would expose everything. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt cold, calculated. Like I was looking at a chessboard and seeing exactly how the next 10 moves would play out. I could go to the police right now, show them Veronica's report. Ashley would be arrested within days. But something made me pause. If I moved too quickly, Jason might never understand the full scope of what she'd done. He might always see me as the villain who destroyed his marriage, not the father who'd tried to protect him from a criminal. No, this needed to be handled carefully, strategically. I called Daniel from the parking lot. I need you to prepare criminal fraud documentation, but don't file it yet. Richard, what did you find? Everything we needed. I'll explain later. Just have the paperwork ready. My next call was to Jason. He answered immediately, hope sharp in his voice. Dad, we need to talk. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, my workshop. Come alone. I don't know if... Alone, Jason. If Ashley comes with you, I won't open the door. I hung up before he could argue. That evening, I sat in my workshop surrounded by the smell of sawdust and wood varnish, thinking about justice versus revenge. Revenge was emotional, chaotic, ultimately hollow. Justice was precise, measured, permanent. I wasn't interested in revenge. But justice? Justice I could work with. And tomorrow, my son was going to learn exactly what his wife had done, what they'd both become. Tomorrow, he'd have to choose which side of the line he wanted to stand on. I picked up a piece of sandpaper and began smoothing the rough edges of the table leg I'd been working on for weeks. The wood was stubborn, full of knots and irregular grain, but with patience and the right pressure applied in the right places, even the most difficult piece could be shaped into something useful. It was going to be a very interesting conversation. Jason didn't come alone. I saw them pull up through the workshop window, Jason's sedan with Ashley in the passenger seat. They sat in the car for a few minutes, clearly arguing. I could see her gesturing emphatically, her face animated with the kind of controlled fury I'd come to recognize. Jason kept shaking his head, but she wasn't backing down. Finally, they both got out. I met them at the door before they could knock. I said alone, I told Jason. We're married, Ashley said, her voice sharp. Whatever you have to say to him, you can say to me. I looked at my son. His face was drawn, exhausted. He'd lost weight in the past week and a half. Jason! He couldn't meet my eyes. She insisted. I could have closed the door. Should have, probably. But something made me step aside. Fine, come in. The workshop was my territory, filled with the smell of wood and varnish, tools organized with the precision I'd learned over decades of architectural work. Ashley looked around with barely concealed disdain, probably cataloging everything as shabby or outdated. Jason's eyes went to the table I'd been working on, the one with 3 legs attached and the 4th waiting. You wanted to talk, Ashley said, crossing her arms. So talk. I walked to my workbench and picked up the folder Veronica had given me. I wanted to show Jason something, but since you're here, you might as well see it too. If this is about the house, she started, but I cut her off. It's about money. Specifically, $185,000 you borrowed against a property you didn't own. The color drained from Ashley's face so fast it was almost comical. Almost? Jason looked confused. What are you talking about? I opened the folder and spread the documents across the workbench. Loan applications, bank statements, property records. 6 months ago, Ashley took out a home equity loan on the Camelback house. The problem is she didn't have the legal right to do that. The gift deed I gave you had restrictions. She removed those restrictions from the copy she submitted to the bank. That's not true, Ashley stammered, but her voice had lost its edge. I had every right. You forged legal documents, I said calmly. That's federal mortgage fraud. It carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in federal prison. Jason grabbed the documents, his hands shaking as he scanned them. I watched his face as understanding dawned. Ashley? Is this real? It's a mistake, she said quickly. The bank made an error. I didn't forge anything. Don't lie to him. My voice was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute certainty. The private investigator I hired found everything. The original gift deed, with the reversionary clause, the altered version you submitted, the loan disbursement, the Mercedes you bought with part of the money, every single transaction. You hired a detective to spy on us? Ashley's shock was giving way to rage now. That's insane. You're paranoid and vindictive and thorough, I corrected. I'm thorough and suspicious. Turns out I had good reason to be. Jason was still staring at the papers. $185,000? Where did it all go? $70,000 to pay off your credit cards, I said, watching Ashley's face. $45,000 for the Mercedes. The rest into your checking account over 6 months. It's all documented. We needed that money, Ashley said, her voice rising. Jason's business was struggling. We had expenses. You committed a federal crime, I said, and now the house is back in my name, which means that loan is about to default. When it does, the bank will investigate. They'll find the forged documents, and then they'll call the FBI. The silence in the workshop was absolute. I could hear the tick of the old clock on the wall, the distant sound of traffic from Scottsdale Road. Jason finally looked up at me. What do you want? I want you to understand who you married, I said. I want you to see what she's been doing behind your back, how she's been using both of us. I did it for us, Ashley said to Jason, ignoring me completely. For our future. Your father has millions sitting in accounts doing nothing while we're struggling. Someone had to take action. By committing fraud? Jason's voice was barely a whisper. By being smart. By recognizing opportunities. She turned to me, and the mask of civility finally dropped completely. You want to know the truth? Yes, I took that loan. Yes, I altered the deed. Because you're a selfish old man who'd rather sit in this pathetic workshop making furniture nobody wants than help your own son succeed. That money should have been ours anyway. It wasn't yours to take, I said. Neither was the house, apparently. But you gave it to us, then ripped it away the second we said something you didn't like. You're cruel and petty and... Careful, I said softly. You're confessing to a federal crime in front of witnesses. That stopped her. She looked around wildly as if expecting to see FBI agents hiding behind the table saw. You're recording this? No, but Jason heard you admit it. Didn't you, son? Jason's face had gone pale. He looked at Ashley like he'd never seen her before. You really did it. You forged documents and took out a loan we can't pay back. We would have paid it back if he hadn't stolen the house from us. I didn't steal my own property, I said. I reclaimed it after you violated the terms of the gift. Ashley's eyes narrowed. You planned this. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? The clause in the deed, hiring the detective, all of it. You've been waiting for an excuse to destroy us. I've been protecting myself, I corrected, from exactly this kind of behavior, and it turns out I was right to do so. She looked at Jason. He's trying to manipulate you. Can't you see that? He wants to turn you against me. But Jason was still staring at the loan documents. How are we going to pay this back? The monthly payment alone is... He did the math in his head. $2,300. Ashley, our business barely makes that some months. I had a plan, she said desperately. If we could just get him to update his will, make you the immediate beneficiary, instead of putting everything in a trust. You wanted me to die, I said flatly. That was the plan. Hope I'd have a heart attack or stroke so Jason could inherit quickly enough to cover your fraud. No, that's not. I never... But her face told a different story. Jason stood up, the documents falling from his hands. I need air. I need to think. Jason, wait! Ashley reached for him, but he pulled away. Don't touch me right now. He walked out of the workshop without looking back. Through the window, I watched him lean against his car, his head in his hands. Ashley turned to me, and what I saw in her eyes was pure calculation. The tears, the desperation, it had all been performance. Now she was assessing, strategizing, looking for a new angle. What do you want? She asked, her voice completely different now. Flat, businesslike. I want you to understand that I have you, I said. Completely. I have the evidence. I have witnesses. I can send you to federal prison any time I choose. But you haven't. Why? Because I want to give Jason a choice first. I picked up the scattered documents, sliding them back into the folder. He can choose you. Stay married, try to weather what's coming, spend the next few years watching you go to trial and likely to prison. Or he can choose to walk away clean. You're trying to break up our marriage. Your fraud did that. I'm just offering him a way out. She laughed, sharp and bitter. You think he'll leave me? He loves me. He loved the person he thought you were, I said, not the criminal who forged documents and planned to profit from his father's death. I'll fight this, she said. I'll get a lawyer. I'll challenge every piece of your supposed evidence. I'll make your life miserable until you wish you'd never started this. You already hired Glenn Parker, I said, enjoying the surprise that flickered across her face. $450 an hour with a $20,000 retainer you paid with what was left of the fraudulent loan money. How's that working out for you? How do you know that? I told you, I'm thorough. I walked to the door and opened it. This conversation is over. You and Jason have decisions to make. I'd suggest you make them carefully. She stood there for a moment, clearly wanting to say more, but whatever she saw in my face made her reconsider. She walked past me without another word. Through the window, I watched her get in the car, watched Jason straighten up, wipe his face. They sat there for at least 5 minutes, her talking rapidly, him staring straight ahead. Finally, they drove away. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel. Get the criminal complaint ready. I don't think I'll need it, but I want it prepared. What happened? Ashley knows I know everything. Jason knows what she did. Now we wait and see which way he jumps. After hanging up, I stood in my workshop surrounded by sawdust and half-finished projects, thinking about justice and consequences and the slow, methodical process of building something that would last. 2 days later, Ashley made her move. The knock on my door came early on a Tuesday morning. I was expecting Daniel or maybe a courier with legal documents. Instead, I found a woman in her mid-40s, professionally dressed with a clipboard and the kind of expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. Richard Turner, that's me. I'm Susan Martinez from Arizona Adult Protective Services. I need to ask you some questions about a complaint we received. I blinked. Adult Protective Services. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. No mistake, sir. We received a formal complaint expressing concern about your welfare. May I come in? I stepped aside, my mind racing. Ashley. It had to be. But what exactly had she claimed? Susan Martinez sat in my living room, looking around with the practiced eye of someone trained to spot signs of neglect or abuse. I'd kept the place clean, organized exactly as I'd always done. She seemed to note this with approval. Mr. Turner, we received a complaint from your daughter-in-law, Ashley Turner. She expressed concern that you may be experiencing cognitive decline and possibly being manipulated by your attorney. There it was, Ashley's counter move. If she could get me declared incompetent or under undue influence, she could challenge the eviction, maybe even the fraud investigation. I see, I said calmly. And what specific behaviors did she cite? Susan consulted her clipboard. She claims you evicted your son and her from their home without cause, that you've been making irrational accusations against her, and that you've displayed paranoid behavior, including hiring private investigators to spy on your own family. Those are interesting interpretations of actual events, I said. Would you like to hear my version? Over the next 30 minutes, I walked Susan Martinez through everything. The birthday party, Ashley's toast, the gift deed with its reversionary clause. I showed her the court order for the eviction, Perfectly legal, signed by a judge. I showed her Veronica Stewart's investigative report on the mortgage fraud. I showed her my bank statements, my medical records from my last physical 3 months ago, letters from my former business partners. Susan's expression shifted from professional concern to something like fascination. So you hired the private investigator before the party. 2 weeks before, I'd suspected financial irregularities for months. The party incident simply confirmed my broader concerns about their character. In this mortgage fraud, you have documentation, comprehensive documentation, including Ashley's admission of guilt, which my son witnessed. Susan made notes, her pen moving quickly across her forms. Mr. Turner, I have to ask, do you feel you're being manipulated or coerced by your attorney? Daniel Coleman has been my lawyer for 22 years. He's advised me on everything from business contracts to my divorce. He's thorough, ethical, and frankly, the only reason I had the foresight to include that reversionary clause in the gift deed. I smiled slightly. If anyone's trying to manipulate anyone, it's my daughter-in-law attempting to manipulate you into declaring me incompetent. Susan closed her folder. I've seen enough. Mr. Turner, you're clearly of sound mind and making informed decisions about your own welfare. I'll be closing this case with the finding of no cause for intervention. I appreciate your thoroughness, I said. For what it's worth, she said as I walked her to the door. I've handled hundreds of these cases. Families fighting over money brings out the worst in people. Your daughter-in-law isn't the first person to try using our system as a weapon. She paused. Be careful. People who are desperate do unpredictable things. After she left, I stood in my living room for a long moment, then called Daniel. Ashley filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, tried to get me declared incompetent. Did it work? The investigator just left. She saw through it immediately. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Richard, this is escalating. If Ashley's willing to abuse the protective services system, what else might she do? I don't know, but I'm about to find out. Because 3 hours later, I received an email from a reporter at the Phoenix Tribune. Subject line, request for comment on family dispute. I opened it with a sinking feeling. Mr. Turner, I'm working on a story about allegations that you evicted your son and daughter-in-law from their home following a dispute at a family gathering. Your daughter-in-law has provided her account of events. I'm reaching out for your perspective. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Attached were screenshots of social media posts, Ashley's Facebook, her Instagram, all telling a carefully crafted story about a cruel father who'd thrown his loving son and pregnant daughter-in-law onto the streets over a misunderstood joke. Pregnant. That was new, and almost certainly a lie. I sat at my desk, reading through Ashley's public narrative. She'd painted herself as the victim of a vindictive, possibly senile old man who turned on his family without warning. She'd posted photos of the house, my house, with captions about being forced from our home and losing everything. She'd even included a GoFundMe link for legal expenses. The comments section was predictably divided. Half the people expressed outrage at the heartless father. The other half asked pointed questions about why a couple in their 30s couldn't afford their own housing. I forwarded the email to Daniel. Ashley's taking this public. What do you recommend? His reply came within minutes. Don't respond to the reporter yet. Let me make some calls. This could actually work in our favor. I didn't see how, but I trusted Daniel's instinct. Instead, I did something I rarely did. I called my sister Laura in Flagstaff. Richard, I was going to call you. I saw Ashley's posts. What on earth is going on? I told her everything. Laura listened without interrupting, which was one of her better qualities. When I finished, she let out a long breath. That manipulative little... She caught herself. Richard, I'm so sorry. When she first posted about being evicted, I'll admit I wondered if maybe you'd overreacted. But mortgage fraud? Recording her celebrating your absence? It gets worse. She just tried to get Adult Protective Services to declare me incompetent, and she's claiming to be pregnant. Is she? I doubt it, but I can't prove she isn't. Laura was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the start. Fight back. Publicly. That evening I sat down with my laptop and wrote out a detailed timeline of events. Every date, every conversation, every piece of documentation. I didn't name Ashley directly, didn't have to. The facts spoke for themselves. Then I called Kevin Torres, my former colleague who'd moved into city politics. We'd worked together on several municipal building projects back in the day. He was now a member of the Phoenix City Council. "Richard Turner," he said warmly when he answered. "Haven't heard from you in months. How are you?" "I've been better, Kevin. I need a favor." I explained the situation. The abbreviated version focused on the fraud and the false allegations. Kevin listened with growing concern. "This is messy, Richard. I know, but it's also true. Every word of it. What do you need from me?" "I need to set the record straight, publicly, before Ashley's version becomes the accepted narrative." I paused. "Can you help me arrange a press conference?" Kevin was quiet for a long moment. "You're sure you want to do this? Once it's public, there's no taking it back." "It's already public." Ashley made sure of that. "I'm just choosing to tell the complete story instead of her edited version." "All right," he said finally. "I can get you a venue. The community center has a press room. I can reach out to some media contacts. Let them know you're making a statement about a legal matter. But Richard, you need to have your evidence ready. Real evidence, not just your word against hers." "I have everything," I said. "Court orders, bank records, the investigative report, even security camera footage from the house." "Security cameras?" I smiled. "I had them installed when I first built the house. Kept them active even after I gave it to Jason. Ashley didn't know they were there." Kevin let out a low whistle. "You recorded the party?" "Every word of that toast, every laugh. It's all time-stamped and backed up to cloud storage." "Richard," Kevin said, and I could hear the grin in his voice, "you magnificent, devious old architect. When do you want to do this?" "As soon as possible, before she spins this any further. I'll make calls tomorrow. Give me 48 hours. After we hung up, I pulled up the security footage on my computer. I'd already watched it once, the night after the eviction. Watching it again didn't make it any easier. There was Ashley, beautiful and smiling, raising her glass. There was my son, laughing along with her cruel joke. There were 47 guests, none of them uncomfortable enough to object. But now that footage wasn't just painful. It was ammunition. I downloaded the relevant clips, backed them up to 3 separate drives, and emailed copies to Daniel with a note. "For the press conference, make sure the audio is crystal clear." Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called Jason. He answered on the 4th ring. "Dad, have you made a decision yet?" A long pause. "About what?" "About who you want to be, Jason. The man who stands by while his wife commits federal crimes and slanders his father, or the man who does the right thing, even when it's hard." "It's not that simple." "Yes," I said quietly, "it is. Ashley committed fraud. She tried to abuse the protective services system. Now she's lying to the media about being pregnant and homeless. At what point do you say enough?" "She's my wife. She's a criminal who's using you." More silence. Then, "What do you want from me?" "I want you at the press conference I'm holding in 2 days. I want you to stand there and tell the truth about what she did. Not for me. For yourself. You're holding a press conference?" "Ashley made this public. I'm just correcting the record, with evidence." I let that sink in. You can be there or not, your choice. But either way, the truth is coming out. I hung up before he could respond. 2 days. 2 days until everything became irreversible. 2 days until the worthless old man showed Phoenix exactly what he was made of. I picked up the sandpaper and returned to my table, working by the light of my workshop lamps, preparing for what came next. The Phoenix Community Center's press room was smaller than I expected, but Kevin Torres assured me it would be adequate. A podium stood at the front, facing rows of chairs that were already filling with journalists. I counted at least 15 reporters, plus camera crews from 3 local news stations. "You sure about this?" Kevin asked quietly as we waited in the side room. "Once you start, there's no walking it back." "I'm sure." Daniel was with me, along with his paralegal carrying 3 folders of documentation. We'd spent the previous evening organizing everything into a clear, chronological narrative. The gift deed, the reversionary clause, the court order for eviction, Veronica Stewart's investigation report, bank records showing the fraudulent loan, and the security footage, cleaned up, subtitled, "Impossible to Misinterpret." At exactly 2 o'clock, Kevin walked to the podium. Thank you all for coming. Richard Turner has asked to make a statement regarding recent allegations in the media. Mr. Turner? I took my place at the podium, looking out at the assembled press. Some faces were curious, others skeptical. In the back row, I spotted the reporter from the Phoenix Tribune who'd emailed me. She was watching intently, pen poised over her notepad. My name is Richard Turner, I began. I'm a retired architect, 68 years old, and I've lived in Phoenix for 43 years. 2 weeks ago, I evicted my son and daughter-in-law from a house I own on Camelback Road. They've since claimed I did this irrationally, possibly due to mental incompetence. I'm here to set the record straight. I pressed the remote in my hand. Behind me, a screen lit up with the first document, the original gift deed. 3 years ago, I gave this house to my son Jason as a gift. The property was worth approximately $847,000 at the time. My attorney, Daniel Coleman, advised me to include what's called a reversionary clause, a provision that would return ownership to me if certain conditions were violated, specifically if Jason or his wife engaged in behavior that constituted a fundamental breach of familial respect and obligation. Next slide, the court order. On the evening of May 15th, I arrived late to my son's birthday party, a party I had financed to the tune of $23,450. I approached the house and heard, through an open window, my daughter-in-law, Ashley, make a toast. I have security camera footage from inside the house. With your permission, I'd like to play the relevant portion. I nodded to Daniel. The screen switched to video footage. The quality was excellent. I'd installed high-end cameras when I built the house. There was Ashley, beautiful and animated, raising her champagne glass. The audio was crystal clear. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? I'd like to make a toast to my wonderful husband on his 35th birthday. Silence in the press room, everyone leaning forward. Jason, you've worked so hard to build your business, to create the life we have together, and we've done it despite certain obstacles. So here's to us, and to this beautiful home that's finally, truly ours. And thank goodness that worthless old man didn't show up tonight. Now we can really celebrate. The laughter from the party guests echoed through the press room. Then Jason's voice, to be fair, honey, he's probably in his workshop building another birdhouse or whatever. You know how he is, completely out of touch with the real world. More laughter. Ashley again. Oh, we'll get our share eventually. Just have to wait for nature to take its course. Hopefully sooner, rather than later. I paused the video. The silence in the press room was absolute. I could see several reporters' faces reflecting shock, others scribbling furiously. I stood outside my own house, I said quietly, listening to 47 guests I had paid for, laugh at the worthless old man who wasn't there. I listened to my daughter-in-law express her hope that I would die soon so they could inherit my estate, and I made a decision. Next slide, the timeline of events that followed. Within 2 hours, I had contacted my attorney and activated the reversionary clause. The court granted an emergency hearing, and by 10:15 that evening, deputies were at the house with an eviction order. Jason and Ashley had 60 minutes to pack essentials and leave. The eviction was completely legal, completely justified, and completely deserved. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Turner, your daughter-in-law claims you're experiencing cognitive decline. She filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services. She did, I confirmed. A social worker visited me 3 days ago. After reviewing my medical records, financial documents, and discussing the situation with me, she closed the case with a finding of no cause for intervention. I have the official report here if you'd like to see it. Another reporter. She also claims she's pregnant and that you've left her homeless. Ashley is not pregnant. That's a fabrication designed to generate sympathy. As for homeless, she and Jason have been staying at the Marriott on East Camelback at $287 per night. They're not destitute. They're desperate. And the reason they're desperate is this. I pressed the remote again. New documents appeared on screen. Bank records, loan applications, property documents with highlighted sections. 6 months ago, Ashley Turner took out a home equity loan for $185,000, using my house as collateral. The problem is she didn't legally own that house. She forged documents, removing the reversionary clause from the gift deed before submitting it to the bank. That's federal mortgage fraud. She used the loan money to pay off credit card debts, buy a Mercedes, and fund their lifestyle. Every penny is gone, and now that I've reclaimed the house, that loan is in default. The room erupted in murmurs. Cameras zoomed in on the documents. I waited for the noise to subside. I hired a private investigator 2 weeks before the birthday party because I suspected financial irregularities. The investigation confirmed my suspicions. Ashley committed a federal crime using property I had given them in good faith. When I evicted them, I didn't just reclaim my house. I inadvertently triggered the discovery of that fraud. The Tribune reporter stood. "Have you filed criminal charges?" "Not yet. I wanted my son to have a chance to make the right choice first, to separate himself from a woman who committed fraud, who hoped publicly for my death, and who is now lying to the media about being pregnant and homeless. Jason has 48 hours to decide which side of the line he wants to stand on. And if he doesn't, then I'll provide all of this evidence to the FBI and let them handle it. Ashley Turner will face federal prosecution for mortgage fraud, which carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison." I let that sink in, watching the reporters process everything. Then I delivered the final piece. "I want to be clear about something. I'm not a vindictive man. I'm not doing this for revenge. But I am done being treated as a worthless old man by people who want my money, but not my company. I built a successful architecture firm over 4 decades. I raised my son the best I knew how. I gave generously because I believe family came first. But when someone uses that generosity against you, when they forge your documents and celebrate your absence, there have to be consequences." I gathered my notes. "I'm happy to answer questions, but everything I've presented today is documented and verifiable. The security footage is time-stamped and backed up to multiple secure locations. The financial records are public or were obtained through legitimate investigation. The court orders are a matter of public record. This isn't he said, she said. This is documented fact." The questions came rapid fire for the next 20 minutes. I answered each one calmly, precisely, referring to specific documents when needed. Daniel interjected occasionally on legal points. The reporters were thorough, but the evidence was overwhelming. Finally, Kevin stepped in. "That's all the time we have. Thank you all for coming." As the crowd dispersed, several reporters approached me directly. I handed them USB drives Daniel had prepared, copies of all the documentation, properly organized and labeled. "Everything you need is on here," I told them. "Verify it yourselves. I encourage it." Walking out of the community center, I felt lighter somehow. The truth was out. Not my version or Ashley's version, but the documented, verifiable truth. Whatever happened next, at least the record was clear. My phone rang as I reached my car. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "You just destroyed my life." Ashley's voice was shaking with rage. "You destroyed everything." "No, Ashley. You did that when you forged those documents. I just made sure people knew about it. Jason will never forgive you for this." "Maybe not. But at least he'll know the truth about you. I'll fight this." You'll lose," I said calmly. "Everything I presented today was documented. You can't lie your way out of facts. You can't manipulate evidence. This is over." I hung up before she could respond. Daniel called minutes later. The story's already hitting online. Fox 10, ABC 15, The Tribune, they're all running with it. And Richard? Public opinion is shifting fast. The comment sections are brutal toward Ashley. "Good," I said, and meant it. The article in the Phoenix Tribune appeared online within 3 hours. The headline read, "Local woman accused of mortgage fraud after eviction from father-in-law's home." The television coverage was even more pointed. They played the security footage clip, Ashley's toast about the worthless old man, on every evening newscast. By the next morning, Ashley's social media accounts had been deleted. The GoFundMe page was gone. The carefully crafted narrative of the victimized daughter-in-law had evaporated in the face of documented evidence. I was in my workshop when my phone rang. "Jason, Dad, I need to talk to you." "I'm listening. Can I come over, please?" 20 minutes later, he was sitting across from me in the workshop. He looked terrible. Eyes red, skin pale like he hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. "I'm filing for divorce," he said without preamble. I set down the sandpaper I'd been using. "When did you decide?" "About 3 seconds after they played that video, on the 6 o'clock news. I watched it with Ashley in the hotel room. She tried to explain it away, said it was just drunk talk, that she didn't mean it. But I heard her voice, I heard myself laughing, and I realized you were right. I don't even know who I've become." "What did Ashley say when you told her?" "She didn't believe me at first. Then she got angry. Said you'd manipulated me, poisoned me against her. She actually tried to convince me that you'd somehow edited that security footage." He laughed bitterly. "Like you're some kind of tech wizard who can fake time-stamped video." "The footage is real, Jason. Everything I presented was real." "I know," he rubbed his face. "I know that now. But Dad, she's not going quietly. She called Glenn Parker, her attorney, and they're planning something. I don't know what, but she was on the phone for 2 hours last night, and when she hung up she had this look, like she'd found a way to fight back." "Let her try," I said. "I have documentation of everything." "She also called someone else. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, but I caught some of it. Something about adult protective services didn't work, so they need a different angle. Something about proving you manipulated me into turning against her. I considered this. She's running out of moves, Jason. The fraud is documented. The eviction was legal. My mental competency has been verified by the state. What else can she do?" The answer came the next morning. I woke to find an email from my bank, flagged as urgent. Someone had attempted to access my accounts overnight, using what appeared to be legitimate credentials. The bank's fraud detection system had blocked the attempt, but they were requesting I come in immediately to verify my identity and reset my security. I called Daniel first. Someone tried to hack my bank accounts. Ashley? Who else? She must be desperate enough to try accessing my finances directly, maybe looking for something to use against me, or maybe just hoping to find evidence of financial mismanagement. Did they get in? No, the bank caught it. But Daniel, this is escalating beyond property disputes. This is criminal hacking. Document everything. Save that email. Get the bank to provide you with their security logs. This is another felony. At the bank, the manager, a woman named Patricia Chen, whom I'd worked with for 15 years, pulled up the attempted access logs. Someone tried to log in using your credentials at 2:47 a.m. They got your username right, but failed the password 3 times. Then they tried the security questions. Got your mother's maiden name wrong, your first car wrong. The system locked them out after 5 failed attempts. Can you trace where they were accessing from? Already did. IP address traces to the Marriott on East Camelback. There it was. Ashley, desperate and reckless, trying to hack into my accounts from her hotel room. I need all of this documented, I told Patricia. Official records, security logs, everything. Already printing, Mr. Turner. Do you want to file a police report? Not yet, but I might need to soon. That afternoon, things got worse. My sister Laura called, her voice tight with worry. "Richard, I just got a call from someone claiming to be an investigative journalist. They wanted to know about your relationship with Jason, whether you'd ever been abusive, whether there was any history of mental instability in the family." What did you tell them? I told them it was none of their business and hung up. But Richard, this felt coordinated, like someone hired them to dig up dirt on you. Ashley, I said, she's trying to destroy my reputation since she can't fight the facts. Over the next 2 days, I received calls from 3 more family members, all reporting similar contacts. Someone was conducting what amounted to a smear campaign, trying to find anyone who would say something negative about me. They were asking about my divorce 30 years ago, about Jason's childhood, about my business practices, anything that could be twisted into evidence of bad character. I called a family meeting, not physical, but a conference call with my sister, my ex-wife, and several cousins who'd been contacted. I explained the entire situation, showed them the documentation I'd presented at the press conference. "So what do we do?" Laura asked. "Don't talk to anyone claiming to be a journalist unless they can prove their credentials. If they do prove it, tell them the truth, that I'm a good man who was betrayed by people he trusted, and I'm simply protecting my assets and my dignity. My ex-wife, Jason's mother, Diane, spoke up for the first time. Richard, I saw the video. What Ashley said about you. I'm so sorry. Not your fault, Diane. But it is, partly. I taught Jason to respect you, but after the divorce, maybe I didn't reinforce it enough. Maybe if I'd... You did fine, I interrupted gently. Jason's choices are his own. He's a grown man. That evening I received a certified letter. I recognized Glenn Parker's law firm name on the return address. Inside was a formal legal notice. Ashley Turner was filing a civil lawsuit against me for defamation, emotional distress, and wrongful eviction. She was seeking $2.5 million in damages. I called Daniel immediately. She's suing me. For what? I read him the list of allegations. When I finished, Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Richard, she's suing you for defamation after you presented documented evidence at a press conference, and wrongful eviction after a court order. He laughed again. This lawsuit won't survive a motion to dismiss. It's frivolous. Parker must be desperate for billable hours. Or Ashley's desperate for any weapon she can find. Either way, it's not a threat. It's a tantrum in legal form. But it was still stressful. Still another thing to deal with. Another reminder that Ashley wasn't going to stop fighting until she was forced to. The next morning, I woke to find my workshop's front window had been spray-painted. One word in black paint. Liar. I stood there looking at it, coffee cup in hand, feeling a cold anger settle in my chest. This wasn't legal maneuvering anymore. This was vandalism, harassment. Ashley had crossed yet another line. I took photos, called the police, filed a report. The officer who responded was sympathetic, but realistic. Without cameras or witnesses, we can't prove who did this. Could have been anyone. It was my daughter-in-law, I said, or someone she hired. Can you prove that? No. Then all I can do is document it. After he left, I called a security company and had cameras installed around my property. Then I called Daniel. She vandalized my workshop. Did you file a police report? Yes, but they can't prove it was her. Richard, Daniel said carefully, I think it's time to stop holding back. File the criminal fraud complaint. Let the FBI handle Ashley. This is getting dangerous. He was right. I knew he was right. But something made me hesitate. I'd given Jason 48 hours to choose. That time wasn't up yet. Despite everything, I wanted to give my son the chance to do the right thing before I brought the full weight of federal law enforcement down on his wife. One more day, I said. If Jason files for divorce by tomorrow, I'll hold off on the fraud complaint. Give him a chance to separate himself cleanly. But if he doesn't, or if Ashley pulls anything else, I'm done waiting. Fair enough, Daniel said. But Richard, watch your back. Desperate people do desperate things. That night, I sat in my workshop, the one with the freshly cleaned window where liar had been, and thought about how far this had all spiraled, from a birthday party toast to federal fraud, to vandalism and smear campaigns. Ashley was fighting with everything she had, throwing every weapon she could find, legal or otherwise. But she was fighting from a position of weakness, and she knew it. Every move she made just dug her hole deeper. Tomorrow was the deadline. Tomorrow, Jason would either file for divorce, or I'd file the criminal complaint. Either way, this war was approaching its end. I picked up my phone and sent Jason a text. Tomorrow is the deadline. Choose wisely. His response came 3 minutes later. I know. I'm ready. I hoped he was, for both our sakes. The next morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after a storm. I was in my kitchen drinking coffee when my phone rang. Jason, I filed the papers an hour ago, he said without preamble. Divorce petition. It's done. I set my coffee cup down carefully. How did Ashley react? She doesn't know yet. I did it while she was out meeting with Glenn Parker. I packed my things from the hotel room and left the papers on the bed. By the time she gets back, I'll be gone. Where are you going? Friend's couch for now. Then I'll find a place. Something I can actually afford. He paused. Dad, I know this doesn't fix everything. I know I've been terrible to you. But I want you to know, I'm not defending her anymore. Whatever consequences come, she earned them. Thank you, Jason. Are you still going to file the criminal complaint? I thought about it. The vandalism, the attempted hacking, the smear campaign. Ashley had crossed every line there was to cross. Yes, but I'll give you a few days to get clear of her first. You don't need to be there when the FBI comes knocking. After we hung up, I called Daniel. Jason filed for divorce. I want to move forward with the fraud complaint. I'll have the paperwork ready this afternoon. We'll file it with the FBI's Phoenix field office tomorrow morning. Good. But Ashley wasn't done fighting. That afternoon, Glenn Parker called Daniel directly. I was in Daniel's office when he put the call on speaker. My client is willing to settle, Parker said. She'll drop the defamation lawsuit, agree to leave Phoenix, and never contact the Turner family again. In exchange, your client doesn't file criminal charges. Your client committed federal mortgage fraud, Daniel said flatly. That's not something we can negotiate away. The bank was defrauded of $185,000. They'll want prosecution regardless of what Richard wants. The bank doesn't know about the forged documents yet. They will. The loan is already in default. When they investigate why, they'll find everything. Richard's complaint just accelerates the inevitable. A pause. Then, what does he want? Daniel looked at me. I took a breath. I want her to face the consequences of her actions. No deals, no settlements, no running away to start fresh somewhere else. She committed a crime. She gets prosecuted. You're destroying her life, Parker said. She destroyed her own life when she forged those documents. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. Parker hung up without another word. That evening I received an email from Ashley herself. No subject line, just 2 sentences. I hope you're proud of yourself. You've ruined everything. I deleted it without responding. The next morning, Daniel and I walked into the FBI's Phoenix field office with a folder 3 inches thick. Documents, evidence, witness statements, security footage, bank records, everything organized chronologically and cross-referenced. The agent who met with us was a woman in her early 40s named Sarah Chen. She listened to our presentation for 90 minutes, occasionally asking questions, taking notes in a precise, methodical way that reminded me of reviewing architectural plans. When we finished, she sat back. This is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I've ever seen. Usually we have to dig for this stuff. You've handed us everything. I'm thorough, I said. I can see that. She closed the folder. Based on this evidence, I'll be recommending immediate investigation and likely prosecution. The forged documents alone are enough, but combined with the attempted unauthorized access to your bank accounts and the harassment campaign, this shows a pattern of criminal behavior. How long before something happens? Daniel asked. We'll need to verify the documents, interview witnesses, coordinate with the bank. But given the strength of this evidence, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks before we bring charges. Maybe less. 2 weeks. After everything, it would all come down in just 2 weeks. I shook Agent Chen's hand. Thank you for your time. Mr. Turner, I have to ask, why wait this long to file? You've had this evidence for weeks. I wanted to give my son a chance to make the right choice first. He did. Now there's nothing holding me back. The news broke 3 days later. Not from the FBI, they were still investigating, but from Glenn Parker, withdrawing as Ashley's attorney. He filed a motion to be removed from her case, citing irreconcilable differences with the client. Legal speak for, she lied to me and I'm not going down with this ship. The Phoenix Tribune ran a follow-up story. Attorney withdraws from Turner defamation case, following fraud allegations. The article detailed Parker's withdrawal and mentioned that sources close to the investigation confirmed federal authorities were looking into the mortgage fraud claims. Ashley was on her own now. No lawyer, no husband, no house, no money, and the FBI closing in. She made one last attempt to reach out. She showed up at my workshop on a Tuesday afternoon. I was working on the table, all 4 legs finely attached, the surface sanded smooth and ready for staining. I heard her car pull up, but didn't go to the door. She knocked again. Then she started talking through the door. Richard, please, I know you're in there. I just want to talk. I set down my tools and walked to the door, but didn't open it. There's nothing to talk about, Ashley. I made mistakes. I know that. But federal prison for a loan, that's excessive. You didn't just take a loan. You forged legal documents, committed bank fraud, and then tried to cover it up with harassment and false accusations. Those aren't mistakes. They're crimes. I was desperate. Jason's business was failing. We had debts. So you decided to commit fraud using my property as collateral. You made your choice. Now you live with it. Please, her voice cracked. I'm begging you. Drop the complaint. I'll leave Phoenix. You'll never hear from me again. The FBI doesn't work that way. Even if I drop the complaint, the bank will prosecute once they discover the forged documents. And they will discover them. The loan is in default, and they're investigating. Silence. Then, you really want to see me go to prison? I want to see justice done. What happens to you is a consequence of what you did, not what I want. I called you worthless. Her voice was different now, harder. One stupid toast, and you destroyed my entire life. You didn't just call me worthless. You wished for my death so you could inherit my money. You celebrated my absence at a party I paid for. You forged documents, committed fraud, tried to have me declared incompetent, vandalized my property, and conducted a smear campaign against me. The toast was just the beginning. I heard her footsteps retreating, heard her car start and drive away. That was the last time I saw Ashley Turner in person. The FBI moved faster than Agent Chen predicted. 10 days after our meeting, 2 agents arrived at the Marriott, where Ashley was still staying. They arrested her on federal charges of bank fraud, wire fraud, and making false statements to a financial institution. The news coverage was extensive. Every station ran footage of Ashley being led out in handcuffs, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. The same woman who'd stood in my house making toasts and laughing now faced 30 years in federal prison. Jason called me that evening. I saw the news. Are you all right? I don't know. Part of me feels terrible for her, but mostly I just feel relieved, like I can finally breathe. That's normal. Dad, I know I can't undo the last 4 years, but I want to try. To be better. To be the person you raised me to be. Then do it, I said quietly. Not for me. For yourself. 2 weeks after the arrest, the prosecutor offered Ashley a plea deal. She could plead guilty to 1 count of mortgage fraud in exchange for 18 months in federal prison, restitution of the full $185,000, and 3 years of supervised release. The alternative was going to trial and facing up to 30 years, if convicted on all counts. Her public defender advised her to take the deal. She did. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for early the following month. The federal courthouse in downtown Phoenix was imposing, all glass and steel and the weight of justice. I sat in the gallery with Daniel beside me, watching as Ashley was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Gone was the confident woman who'd made that toast. This was someone who'd lost everything and knew it. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the plea agreement. Ms. Turner, you understand that by accepting this plea, you're admitting to federal mortgage fraud. Yes, Your Honor. Ashley's voice was barely audible. And you understand the terms. 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised release, and full restitution of $185,000. Yes, Your Honor. The judge looked at her for a long moment. Ms. Turner, mortgage fraud isn't a victimless crime. You defrauded a financial institution. You violated the trust of your father-in-law, who had given you a substantial gift, and you did so with deliberate intent to deceive. The court finds your actions deeply troubling. Ashley's shoulders shook. She was crying now, silently. However, the judge continued, the court also recognizes your cooperation with the investigation and your acceptance of responsibility. The plea agreement is accepted. You are sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will pay full restitution of $185,000 to the defrauded institution. You are to report to the designated facility within 30 days. The gavel came down. Ashley's public defender touched her arm, speaking quietly. Ashley turned to look at the gallery, her eyes finding mine. I expected anger, defiance, hatred. Instead, I saw something like resignation, acceptance. She nodded once, then turned away as the marshals led her out. It's done, Daniel said quietly beside me. Yes, I said. It's done. Outside the courthouse, a few reporters were waiting. I gave them a brief statement. Justice has been served. My focus now is on rebuilding my relationship with my son and moving forward with my life. I have no further comment. The story ran in the Tribune the next day, then faded from the news cycle. People moved on to other scandals, other stories. Life continued. Jason came to see me the following weekend. He'd moved into a small apartment in Tempe. Nothing fancy but affordable. His marketing agency was slowly recovering. He'd brought in a business partner and was rebuilding his client base. "I wanted to show you something," he said, pulling out his phone. He scrolled to a photo of a notebook page covered in his handwriting. "Business plan. Real one this time, with actual numbers that make sense. I'm not asking for money," he added quickly. "Just wanted you to see that I'm trying." I looked at the plan. It was rough but honest, built on realistic projections instead of wishful thinking. This is good work, Jason. I'm also starting therapy to figure out how I let things get so bad, how I let Ashley manipulate me, how I treated you. He met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. I know you are. Can we—" He hesitated. "Can we try again? Not like before. I know that's gone. But maybe we can build something new." I thought about the young boy who'd helped me build a crooked birdhouse, the teenager who'd worked beside me in the workshop, the man who'd stood in my house and laughed while his wife called me worthless, and now this man, broken and trying to rebuild. "We can try," I said, "but on different terms. No more handouts. No more enabling. If you want a relationship with me, it's based on honesty and respect. Nothing else. Deal." Over the following weeks, we developed a cautious routine. Sunday dinners at my house where Jason helped me cook and we talked about his business, his life, his therapy. He brought his son, my grandson, who I hadn't seen in over a year. The boy was 6 now, shy at first, but he warmed up when I showed him the workshop. "Can we build something, Grandpa?" he asked. We built a small wooden box together, nothing fancy. But watching my grandson's face light up when we finished it, seeing that same joy I'd once seen in Jason's eyes, that was worth more than any revenge. Ashley was transferred to a federal facility outside of Tucson. She would serve at least 15 months before being eligible for release. The house on Camelback Road remained mine. I considered selling it, but in the end I decided to keep it. Maybe someday Jason would earn it back, maybe not. Either way, it would be my decision to make. The story eventually faded from my daily thoughts. I returned to my workshop, to my woodworking, to the quiet life I'd built for myself. The table I'd been working on throughout this entire ordeal was finally finished, cherry wood with hand-carved details, strong and beautiful and built to last. I donated it to a charity auction. It sold for $3,000, which went to a shelter for families facing eviction. It seemed fitting somehow. One evening in late summer, I was in my workshop listening to Coltrane and sanding a new piece when my phone rang. "Daniel." "Richard, just wanted to let you know. The defamation lawsuit Ashley filed against you was officially dismissed today. The judge ruled it frivolous given her criminal conviction." "Good to know. Also, the bank received the first restitution payment from the court. It's going to take Ashley years to pay it all back, but at least the process has started. Thank you for the update, Daniel." After we hung up, I stood in my workshop surrounded by sawdust and half-finished projects, the smell of wood and varnish, the sound of jazz filtering through the old speakers. This was my space, my sanctuary, mine. I thought about everything that had happened: the birthday party, the toast, the eviction, the investigation, the press conference, the arrest, the sentencing. All of it had started because I'd overheard my daughter-in-law call me worthless and celebrate my absence. But I wasn't worthless. I never had been. I was a man who'd built a successful business, designed buildings that would stand for generations, raised a son who was now learning to be better. I was a man who'd stood up for himself when people tried to use him, who'd demanded respect when others tried to take it away. The worthless old man had shown them all exactly what he was worth. I picked up a piece of sandpaper and returned to my work. The wood was rough under my fingers, but with patience and the right pressure, it would become smooth, beautiful, worthy of the craftsmanship I had put into it. Outside, the phoenix sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Another day ending, another day survived, another day lived on my terms. Justice had been served. Not revenge, never revenge, just the simple, satisfying knowledge that actions have consequences, that dignity matters, and that sometimes the worthless old man is the only one in the room who knows his true worth. I smiled, picked up my phone, and sent Jason a text. "Dinner this Sunday? Your turn to cook?" His response came almost immediately. "I'll be there." Maybe we couldn't reclaim the past, but we could build something new, something honest, something real. And that, I thought as I returned to my table, was worth more than any revenge could ever be. If you like this story, subscribe to our new channel and listen to a few stories there. You can find the link to it in the collaboration or description of this video or in the comments. Subscribe so you don't lose us, because this channel may soon cease to exist.